W. We all know people in the world who carry baggage. You know, those folks who go through life and say, poor me, I can't do this, I can't do that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, guests of Transplace, I don't want to talk about baggage. I want to talk about a treasure chest. Instead of bags, a treasure chest. The only difference between baggage and a treasure chest is in the content. And who gets to decide that content? We do. For me, that choice was driven by philosophy. In my life, there are no barriers, there are only solutions. And hence, I have 3 advantages. Bear with me for a moment. Advantage number 1. I was born black in apartheid South Africa, a country which said, based on the color of my skin, what hospital I could be born in, what school I could attend, what neighborhood I could live in, almost down to what kind of job I could have. Apartheid was a harsh period in the history of South Africa. Advantage number 2. I was born in a working class family. My father was a commercial diver, but unfortunately he became an alcoholic. And through this disease of alcoholism, he could not hold down a job. He eventually became a security guard in a factory. When my father retired, his pension was unlivable. My mother was a school teacher, and we know the contributions that school teachers make to society are immense, but their compensation is minuscule. Advantage number 3. You see, I can walk today, but I don't take this for granted, because I could not always walk. When the big guy upstairs handed out hip sockets, somehow I was not paying attention. In the left hip, where we should have a complete ball and socket joint, I lacked the cup of the ball and socket joint. This was discovered when I was 18 months of age, and my first surgery happened shortly thereafter. By the age of 5, I had gone through 3 major surgeries. That last surgery after my 5th birthday left me in a body cast from my ankle to my chest. If I wanted to see a different view, a nurse or a doctor physically had to pick me up and shift me around. Ladies and gentlemen, you just heard me speak about my 3 advantages, but you just heard me speak about prejudice, economic hardship, and physical disability. And you're shaking your heads, and you're saying, this guy's crazy. Those are not advantages. Well, each and every one of us in this room has been dealt a hand of cards. We can't change that fact. But how we choose to play the hand is totally up to us. We have a choice to say, oh, poor me, and feel sorry, and carry the baggage of all of those pretty harsh and horrible things. Or instead, we can rise up and say, if I can overcome prejudice, economic hardship, or physical disability, then whatever else life throws at me, I shall overcome that too. It's about our attitude. We call today the present because we have the gift of life. We get to choose how we look at things. We get to choose whether we carry baggage or instead a treasure chest. So, as a kid growing up, yep, this was my reality. But that did not mean that that would be my life. Now, to understand the journey I'm about to take you on, from the shores of South Africa to where we are now, I've got to lay down a little foundation. And that foundation was in a teeny little woman, my mother. My mother was the most powerful woman in my world. My mother was a school teacher, and she would never allow me to feel sorry for myself. She said that life isn't always fair. Sometimes you have to work harder than others. You always have to work smarter. But if you have a dream, if you have a goal, be willing to fight for that. Be willing to die for that. And my mother lived by example. Now, a little bit of a background to Neal Petersen. My mom went to high school in an era when very few women went to school. And she graduated near the top of her class. And then she got a scholarship to university. And even fewer women went to university. We are talking in the 1940s. And Mom didn't just become a university student, she became one of the best university students in Cape Town. And as a result, when she graduated from her basic degree, she was awarded a scholarship to the University of Syracuse, New York. She traveled from South Africa via steamship to London and then across the Atlantic to the United States, and then took a train from New York City to upstate New York to Syracuse. And there she attended Syracuse University to do her master's in education. And when she graduated, she was offered all kinds of teaching posts in the United States. She turned them down to go back to South Africa, back to our roots, to her community, because she wanted to make a contribution to her community. And my mother was very outspoken. And she was a woman who believed in education. She believed that irrespective of race, color, or creed, sex, economics, every child is entitled to a decent education. This made her a subversive. Now, you have to remember, my mom was vocal in an era when very few women, even in the United States, were involved in politics or attending university. And she became extremely outspoken. So the government reduced her from being a university professor to teaching in a training college. She would not keep her mouth shut. She continued in her beliefs, unwavering. So after a banning order, where for 5 years she could not leave the house, but she could only go to work and back to the house, under constant government scrutinization, they reduced her to being a biology teacher at her alma mater. And they thought they were done with my mother. What the South African government didn't realize, they had just put her in one of the most powerful places, more powerful than being a professor. They put her in a place where she could plant the seeds in young minds, the seeds of democracy, the seeds of compassion, the seeds of change. And so these young teenagers that she was teaching, she pushed them and pushed them hard. And as I grew up, my mom used to coach me because I missed so much of my schooling from being in hospital. But she used to coach other students all the time. And some of these students were brilliant. And then at a certain time of the year, she would go to the University of Cape Town, her alma mater, and fight for slots, particularly in the medical school. And when she was successful in getting those slots, because the number of slots offered were based on the race groups, so then she would go to the business community and hunt for scholarship money. And year after year after year, I watched my mother do this throughout my schooling life. She did it for over 36 years. And sometimes I got very frustrated because if she wasn't coaching students, she was helping to set exam papers or mark exam papers. And I said, Mom, you've got all these students, but you also have 2 kids, my sister and I. We need your attention. And she said, all our children need my attention, our attention. This is our community. I want to jump ahead. Many years go by. I grew up, I became an international sportsman, and I returned to South Africa for a promotion, and Mom met me at the airport. And there was something different when I saw her. She had not just grown older, she looked different. And then I realized my mother had no breasts. I said, Mom, what happened? She said, well, some years back I was diagnosed with breast cancer. This was news to me. And I said, why wasn't I told? She said, I didn't want to burden you. And then a couple of years ago, it got out of control, and my medical team, my medical professionals decided they had to do a double mastectomy. This was the first I was hearing of my mom's surgeries. And again, I said, Mom, why wasn't I told? She said, well, you had your own burdens. I did not want to burden you with my problems. This is the strength of my mother. So I said, well, besides my sister, as I wasn't there for you, who was? And she started to rattle off names. Names of former students that I recognized. I grew up with some of them. I said, well, so-and-so became my oncologist. So-and-so was my anesthesiologist. So-and-so was director of nursing. My mother received medical attention that no amount of money could ever purchase. Her students rallied in around her to save the life of their teacher. My mother did not invest her time in education because one day she was going to need a return. She did the right thing. She invested in our community because our community would need the services of all its citizens. My mother just became one of the benefactors of the investment she had made. And so we must not ask, what can we get, but how can we serve? How can we make a difference? This was the lessons I was raised upon. But I also came to realize that we have to ask certain questions of ourselves. And we have to emphatically say yes to all of these questions. And I kind of grew up learning that there were 3 questions. And 8 years ago, I added a 4th question. And you may have to remind me about the 4th question. But that first question was, whatever we do, is it right for ourselves? Each and every one of us in this room can justify that answer, including the drug dealers. So now we come to the second question. What I do, is it right for my family? And again, everybody here can justify our actions. The drug dealer can say, look at the nice house we live in, or the nice cars we drive, or the wonderful private schools, whatever. And most people in society stop at the second question. That third question is, what I do, is it right for my community? Now the drug dealer is in trouble. There's no way that person can say selling drugs to kids is the right answer. And today, as you know, we live in a global community. What happens here in Dallas has implications across Texas, across the United States, across our planet. When you do something, it is felt, the ripples, worldwide in several ways. Today we live in an interconnected world, but we must ask powerful questions of ourselves and let it be our guiding lights. And later I will tell you about the 4th question. So, my mother had such an influence that she would never take no for an answer. She died 6 months ago, just shy of her 90th birthday. 3 years ago, my mother was awarded an honorary doctorate at age 87. She continued to set the bar. And so for all of us, there is hope. There are people out here in the world who will be our guiding lights, who will be our beacons, who will be our lighthouses. But we must be willing to lift our heads up and embark upon the journey. We must be willing to take the risks, to cast off our dock lines and sail away from the safe harbor, cross the oceans and lose sight of land in order to discover not just who we are, but other opportunities, distant shores. So as a kid, I'm laying in this hospital bed. I'm 5 years of age. I can't walk. I'm in pain. I'm in a body cast. And the doctor makes his round of the segregated ward. I'm in the coloreds only ward. And he stops at my bed. And he says, son, what are you interested in? Now, I grew up in the coastal city of Cape Town, South Africa. The Indian Ocean on one side, the Atlantic on the other. I grew up with the stories of my father and his time at sea. So I said, boats. A few days later, that doctor showed up with a whole stack of sailing magazines. I was too young to read the words, but a picture paints 1,000 words. I saw photographs of beautiful yachts gliding through the ocean, and I thought, maybe someday I could be on a boat. I saw pictures of sandy beaches, turquoise waters, palm tree-lined bays, the tropics, the Caribbean, and I thought maybe someday I could experience what it's like to visit a Caribbean island. What those photographs did was they gave me hope. For each and every one of us, hope is the energy of change. Where we are right now does not necessitate that we'll spend our entire life in the same place. Hope separates us from other species on this planet and becomes the energy that drives us to look to that future, to be positive, to choose whether we carry the baggage or we find our treasure chest. Never give up on your hope, your dreams. So I started to grow up, and my school friends, they were a pretty rough bunch. They used to run around and kick a ball, play this game called soccer, a game that everybody in Europe and South America plays. Very few in America play it. And I stood on the sidelines on my calipers, And I wanted to be with them. I wanted to kick the ball. And they said, hey, you're a sissy. Go play with the girls. I'm still perfecting playing with the girls. But in that rejection lay an opportunity. Instead of being crushed by the rejection, I withdrew to public libraries. And I began to read all kinds of books. But unfortunately, our libraries were segregated. I was sent to the colored-only library, which was a one-room library. And it did not have many books, and not the books of my interest. And so I found out that the books on the sea, the books on adventure, on ocean travel, were in the whites-only library. So I hobbled over to that library, and I stood in the aisles and I read those books. And then one day, I found the courage to check out some of those books. And the librarian allowed me to. The years passed by. I got to read about the great voyages of discovery, the great adventures. I got to hear the name Harry Mitchell and other amazing single-handed sailors, the early explorers of the solo ocean racing world, ocean sailing world, the historic voyages. And then, at age 11, I came across a book that was to change my life forever. Joshua Slocum, Sailing Alone Around the World, the story of a man from Massachusetts who had circumnavigated the globe around 1895 to 1898, over 100 years ago. And this man spoke about his adventures, the people, and this place called Cape Horn, the southernmost cape of our planet. And I thought, wow, I want to be a sailor. I want to own a yacht and see the oceans of the world. I remember going to my dad and saying, hey, Dad, please, can we have a boat? But my father could not buy me that boat. We did not have the money. But my mother said, son, stay reading, stay dreaming. The application of knowledge truly is power.